Good evening, members, officers, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Development Committee, 28th of September 2023. I will now read out the emergency evacuation procedure. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, please leave the building in an orderly fashion through the nearest fire exit. Please use either the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is in the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that this meeting will be live streamed, and can I ask you please to switch off mobiles or turn them onto silent. Members of the public are reminded that this is an official council meeting and the applications will be debated according to procedure rules set out in the council's constitution. Members of the public, can you please note that you're not permitted to speak at this meeting unless you've registered to speak with Democratic Services. In this way, everyone present will be able to hear the debate and councillors will be able to make an informed decision. Can I please also remind you to be respectful of all those attending the meeting, including other members of the public, councillors and officers. Members of the public, while you can, of course, film or take photographs during the meeting, this should be done without disrupting the meeting and can only be done from a designated area in the public seating. Can I please there ask you to raise your hand clearly in the air if you wish to take photographs or film this evening. Can I ask you then to move to the front row, which is the delegated area for photography. Thank you. Thank you for that. Members, your voice will only be captured on the live stream when your microphone is switched on. So please remember to switch on your microphone when you are invited to speak and switch off again when not speaking. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against recommendations, and will also ask for a show of hands for those wishing to abstain from voting. Members, there is a lengthy addendum for tonight's meeting with additional information for each of the three applications. Has everyone had an opportunity to read these? Can I take that as a yes? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 1 and 2, we have received apologies for absence from Councillor Mrs. Shaw, and Councillor Foster is substituting. Councillor Lisa Newport is substituting for Councillor Tracy Knight. Non-members attending. We have Councillor James Gooding, Councillor Julie Gooding, Councillor Mrs. Christine Mason, Councillor Hoy, Councillor Cross, Councillor Mrs. Newport, and Councillor Gadsden. Do I have any other non-members attending? Sorry, Councillor James Newport, I do apologise, and Councillor Sharp, and Councillor Nick Booth. Sorry, mind blank there for a minute. Okay, agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of August 2023. Are the minutes agreed, members? Thank you. Item 5, to receive declarations of interest, and can I remind members that the declarations of interest there are 3 levels of that now, which are disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest, non-registrable interest. Do I have any declarations of interest? Councillor Stanley.
Member of the Greater Town Council.
So that is an other registrable? Okay. Any others? Yes, Councillor Brewer. Same again. Other registrable? Mr Ward? Sorry?
Rayleigh Town Council, but I don't see anything pertaining to Rayleigh Town Council on any item.
No. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Any other? Okay, thank you. So we move on to agenda item 6, land opposite 92 to 102 Windermere Avenue, Holbridge. Members, there is additional information relating to this application set out in the addendum, and Katie Rogers will present the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, this application relates to the site edged red on the plan on screen, and that's down this boundary here to the west, the southern boundary here, the eastern boundary here, and the northern boundary you'll see is adjacent to Windermere Avenue. So planning permission for residential development of the site was approved in 2022. The plan on screen is the approved site layout plan. Members will note a terrace of properties and 2 semi-detached pairs in the southern part of the site, and a flatted block and 2 semi-detached pairs in the northern part of the site. 1 vehicular access was approved and centrally positioned off Windermere Avenue. Parking spaces were approved in this location here, immediately west of the access, and immediately opposite the semi-detached pairs in the northern part of the site, there were some additional parking spaces here. This application before members is a Section 73 variation of condition application. It has been submitted as a result of it transpiring that the 2 oak trees subject to tree preservation order, this is one here and one here, were shown outside the red line boundary in the original application, as you can see on the plan on screen here, when in fact they are correctly within the red line. These trees are labelled T2 and T3. So the image on screen now shows a comparison of an extract of the approved site layout plan, the plan that was just previously on the screen, on the left-hand side here. And members will note the plotting of the trees just outside the red line boundary. T2 and T3 are correctly plotted now, just falling within the red line boundary on the plan on the right-hand side, which is the proposed layout plan. The original planning consent was subject to a number of planning conditions, and condition 10 required tree protection measures and a method of construction within the root protection areas of T2 and T3 to be undertaken in accordance with an arboricultural method statement that had been based on incorrect plotting of the trees. So these were the trees plotted incorrectly. There was an arboricultural method statement to control works within the root protection of those trees, but that information was based on the inaccurate plotting. As a result, the developer could not comply with the original condition 10. This application has therefore been submitted to vary condition 10 to require tree protection and method for working in the root protection areas to be in accordance with an updated arboricultural method statement, which is now based on the accurate plotting of these trees. The revised arboricultural method statement includes 3 tree protection plans, which require tree protective fencing to be installed in different positions as the development progresses on site. So the plan on screen now is Tree Protection Plan 1, and this shows the tree protection fencing in the position shown by the dashed red line. That's just here, if you can see where that light pen is. This fencing must remain in this position on site until such a time as groundworks within the root protection areas of these 2 trees, either T2 or T3, commences, at which point the tree protection fencing must be moved to the position shown by the dashed red line on Tree Protection Plan 2, which is this plan here. So you can see now the red line, the dashed red line, now just follows the sort of northern edge of these parking bays and is just closer to the trunks of those trees. Tree Protection Plan 3 shows the fencing in the same position. So this is the 3rd plan. Again, this tree protection follows this dashed red line. And this is the same as Plan 2, and this must be retained in this position until the development is complete on site. This plan also indicates the areas within the route protection area where different methods of working will be used to construct the different hard surfaces. So the parking spaces are in this kind of lighter beige colour. They're closest to the trees, and they're going to be required to use a low-level excavation method, and there'll be a shingle surface to form the surface of that area. The driveway, this is this sort of darker beige just south of the parking spaces, within the route protection area will be formed using a slightly different method, allowing for slightly deeper excavation and finished with block paving. The arboricultural method statement details the method for construction of the two different hard surfaces within the route protection areas to ensure that impacts on the route will be minimised. The council's tree officer is satisfied with the proposed details and recommends planning conditions, and that will include arboricultural site supervision of works. In addition to seeking to vary condition 10, the application also seeks to vary condition 2, which lists approved plans, as some of the approved plans also show the trees plotted incorrectly. So the image on screen shows an extract of the approved landscaping plan on the left-hand side here. Members will note the incorrect plotting again of T2 and T3 just north of the red line. The image on the right-hand side is an extract of the proposed landscaping plan, which now shows the trees correctly plotted, just falling within the red line site. The proposed landscaping remains very similar to the approved scheme, with lawn provided to enclosed gardens and forward of the flatted block, so that's in this area here, and tree planting across the site. The proposal still includes the planting of a new native hedge along sections of the eastern boundary here, the western boundary here, and a native hedgerow would continue to be continue to be delivered along the entire northern boundary, save for the vehicle access in the middle. What the proposed plan does now make clear is that a section of the existing hedgerow along the northern boundary, the section west of the access and down this little part of the western boundary here, would be retained. This is shown in a slightly different colour. It's just in like a grey colour, and it is annotated on that plan, although illegible at this level that you're viewing it. The final plan I've got to show you is the approved boundary plan. So again, this is an extract of that plan, and on the left-hand side is the approved boundary plan, and on the right-hand side is the proposed boundary plan. Again, this is submitted to correct the incorrect plotting of the two trees. Members will note the proposed boundary treatments remain very similar to those approved. So on the approved scheme, we had a wall proposed around the sort of southern part of the site and all the way up the eastern boundary actually, and forming the rear garden boundary of these semi-detached properties in the northern corner. And again, that same arrangement is proposed here. A post and rail fence with low-level planting is proposed to a section of the western boundary in this location here, adjacent to the parking court. And along the northern boundary, as I've already discussed, there would be a native hedge. The recommendation is one of approval, subject to the planning conditions as set out in the committee report and on the addendum. In addition, it is also recommended that versions of conditions 3 and 12 from the original consent be imposed on the grant of the Section 73 application. Finally, it is noted that the original consent was subject to a Section 106 legal agreement, and the recommendation of approval is therefore subject to the applicant entering into a deed of variation to tie the new planning permission to the terms of the original legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. We have one public speaker on this item, and that speaker is Mr. Rennie, who I'd like to invite to come and speak. You have 5 minutes. I'll let you know when we come to 1 minute before we finish. Thank you.
Okay. I promise not to give a song. Right, thank you very much for the invitation to come along tonight. I read the officer's report on your portal the other day, and the young lady here just touched on the Section 106 agreement. I read through the legal 106 agreement. On there was mention that Windermere Avenue would be resurfaced and a footpath constructed. That does not seem to be included in the documentation provided in the officer's report recently. This resurfacing construction, as I say, is in the legal agreement. And in the legal agreement, it states that until the road is resurfaced to Essex Highway standards and the footpath created, none of the properties on the site can be occupied. And this is a glaring error that should be included and looked at by the Development Committee. I listened with interest to the boundary treatment and retention of the native hedgerow. On there was a mention of retaining the hedgerow on the western side, on the northern boundary, but there seemed to be no mention of retaining the hedgerow on the north side of the ditch on the eastern boundary. And I wonder why. The hedgerow has been a bone of contention for me for the last year. I've written numerous letters to RDC and we've never agreed. Had the plans been drawn up correctly in the start, the hedgerow would have been retained. It's classified of historic nature under the 1997 hedgerow rules, and that was laid out by RDC Planning Committee. The hedgerow dated back to 1873, but has been removed, primarily on the eastern side and partially on the western side. Had that hedgerow been retained, it's highly likely that this application that's been discussed this evening might not have even been raised, because at the moment the parking bays are in the area where the hedgerow would have been retained, and they would have provided adequate root protection for those oak trees. The final point I have to raise as well is on the apartment blocks. The apartment block is entitled to 8 parking bays. There are 7 on the southern side and 3 on the northern side. The 7 on the southern side have 2 visitors' bays. I would assume that it would be far better to have all 8 for the apartment blocks on the southern side and 2 on the northern side for visitors, hence avoiding the need to knock down part of the hedgerow that is there to make way for a parking bay. I put this in writing, but I've had no response from the planning team on this at all, which I think is rather surprising. Finally, I understand that the drainage from the attenuation tank has still not been satisfactorily proven to Rohit Singh. And that's basically about it. So I think I've probably got about half a minute left.
You have plenty of time, but thank you very much, Mr. Rennie. If you'd
Okay.
like to return to your seat. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the water.
Okay, I'd like to start off by just clarifying that this particular application is one that is fairly narrow in its consideration, and the built-out side of the site has been subject to previous planning application, and that has been approved. So there is nothing that we can consider on that sort of side of things. There are issues that I'm aware that Katie will come back on there, so as we can clarify the situation for you, including the ones that you brought up, Mr. Rennie. I will ask. You've had your time. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. But I've noted the things that you've asked, and I will ask for clarification. Okay. So moving on, visiting members. Are there any visiting members, ward members, who would like to speak on this application, please? No? Okay. So over to members. Would any members like to speak on this application? Councillor Stanley? Wilson. Sorry, I didn't see you indicating there.
No, I wasn't indicating, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Stanley, I believe you wanted to say something.
Yes, please. First of all, the road that's indicated on the board at the moment between the flats, if you like, and the houses, the entrance at the moment is at the side of T3, not T2, or in the middle. So the entrance, I don't know whether that's a planning mishap or whatever, but at the entrance is alongside T3 at the moment. There is a lot of traffic going through there, including lorries, and there is no provision for protecting the roots of that tree. Also, T1 overhangs the boundary, and there is no protection on that T1. Although it is a tree preservation order on all of those trees, there doesn't seem to be any preservation to the roots of T1 as well. So I'd like that sorted, please. As for and that's on the main road that runs through there. As for the plants on the hedgerow, I did discuss this with our planning officer, R. Will Evans, and I've yet to get a full description of those plants for the hedgerow. I've not had anything from him whatsoever. I was told he was going to bring it to me, but he hasn't done so. So I don't know if that is correct, that drawing. I don't see it as being correct myself. Thank you.
Okay, any other members wish to? Councillor Ward?
Thank you, Chairman. I was actually puzzled because obviously we don't see the S106 agreements at all. And the resident has mentioned the road. And was there an agreement to actually bring that road up to adoptable standard? Is it on that section 106 agreement?
Sorry, can I stop you there, Councillor Ward? That is subject to enforcement of the previous application. It's not actually what we're considering here tonight.
It's just, no, thank you. But
Yep.
I just wanted to understand that question was brought up. And I can see nothing within any documents which refer to the section 106 in regards to that road. So hence, I think it's a very pertinent question, irrespective of how we're looking at this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ward. I think that's something that maybe could be answered, but I'm not sure if we can answer it tonight. Katie is standing in, but you can? Yes? Okay, I'll hand over to Katie. Thank you.
So taking those questions in reverse order, so that the last question about the section 106, it is relevant to the determination of this application, because if members approve this section 73 application tonight, a new consent is granted, okay, and the development will be built out under this new consent. We have to make sure that all of the clauses in the original 106 still apply in exactly the same way, and that's why I mentioned a deed of variation. So a decision, if members take a decision to approve this application tonight, we won't be able to issue a decision notice immediately tomorrow or next week, because we have to enter, the applicant will have to enter into a deed of variation. It's essentially just a short legal document that ensures that the original 106 is now linked to this new consent. And that does contain a number of clauses relating to different matters, one of which is the resurfacing of a section of Windermere Avenue and the installation of a footway. Okay, so that remains the same as in the original application.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you so much, Chairman. So just to clarify with Katie, it would mean, I take it, having not seen the section 106 agreement, I assume, which I shouldn't assume, but it will be done prior to the first occupation. Can you confirm that, please?
Yep, so the clause relating to the resurfacing of a section of Windermere Avenue and the footway is required to be done prior to first occupation on the site and to the satisfaction of the County Council, Highway Authority. Do you want me to, so can I carry on and answer the
Yes,
question?
please do.
Yeah. So in relation to the trees, the arboricultural method statement that's been submitted, the revised one, that now considers the correct plotting of T2, which is here, and T3, has been looked at by the council's arboricultural officer, who has also attended the site to look at what works have been happening. and is to their satisfaction. There is no objection raised. So our tree officer is entirely happy with the extent to which trees have been surveyed that would be impacted by the proposed development, and the works that are proposed within the root protection areas of those trees. So this tree here is labelled as T2. We have a T3 labelled here. I don't have a T1 that's labelled on the tree protection plan. On the method statements, just bring you to this one here, there is another tree that's plotted outside the site to the western boundary, the root protection area of which is not extending into the site. So we are satisfied that trees that would be impacted, that are subject to TPO, have been properly assessed now. Yes, there are trees, other trees outside of the site, some of which are subject to TPO, and any works to them would be a consideration if they had to take place, but they'd be subject to a separate application process. So you'd have to get a consent order to do any work to trees that are outside the site if any further works were necessary.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Could you bring back the other drawing on that's it, that one there. On the top of is that the north boundary at the top? I believe it is, isn't it? There is a roadway, if you like, that runs through there. Are the roots protected on that roadway? Not that road, but the one on north, where it loads. That's it up there. Yeah. Are those roots protected under this order? And the fact that at the moment the opening onto the site is to the east, is it? West, to the west of the buildings. Not that road, that isn't there at the moment. It's down the other side, which is just outside the red-lined area. Is that going to be the entrance, or is that going to be the entrance? Which one's going to be the entrance to the building plot? Plus the fact, Chairman, from the first day of commencement, it was put in order that the duration of all construction work, therefore, will be put onto the site, and that includes construction traffic, and I presume that being construction traffic are the people that are working on the site, should be in the site and not in Windermere. At this moment in time, they are parking outside of the site, and also the site signs are roughly the same size as our name boards at the moment, which is stuck to the fence. I would ask that those signs be more visible for loading and unloading on the site, if that's possible, to the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. I think that's another issue that we'd have to take up outside the meeting, if I'm right. Is that right?
But all I would say is that the condition 12 on the original consent required a construction method statement, and that was to do with, well, included the management of the storage of materials on site and construction workers' vehicles. We have agreed details in respect of that, and I mentioned that we will be the recommendation is to carry over that consent to make sure that we can enforce the terms of that construction method statement. So it might be what you're touching upon is an enforcement issue, but I don't think it would be relevant to the determination of this application, because we're going to carry forward that condition 12.
All I'm asking is that because the construction of this permeable mattress, if you like, that's going to go there, there will be other construction people going to there to do that specific job. And therefore, with 6.5 on the item 6, where it says 7, it says from the first day of commencement. So that means all materials and construction traffic, and I believe that to be the people that are working there, should be on site. And that's what I'm asking.
So, yeah, we have agreed details of the construction method statement, which seeks to control where contractors and workers on the site will park. So that condition is going to be carried, the recommendation is that that condition be carried forward so that we can continue to enforce that as is necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Katie. If I could hand over to our legal expert, Giles.
This is the only reason this application has come before the committee again is essentially because, as you can see there, the original plan, the one on the left, excluded in error the two big trees. That meant they weren't properly protected through all the conditions and other measures which the council had put in place. Now, that permission, it remains, and the developer is entitled to, and I believe is, beginning to implement it. Now, it's a good thing, to put it in simple terms, that the applicant has made this application to regularise the position, by which I mean you can see on the drawing on the right, including the two protected trees within the red line. That means they will be protected through all of the measures which were previously agreed. So it's a slightly unusual application in that sense. It's exactly the same, but for the measures, the plan, and to ensure that the measures actually protect the two TPO trees. So it is a slightly unusual one, but that's why it comes before you again. And it seems to me the officer is absolutely right that what is required then is a deed of variation to the existing section 106, simply to link it to the new application were you to approve it.
Thank you. To answer one of the questions that Mr. Rennie brought as well, section 2.41 does list quite comprehensively the plants that have been considered for the new hedgerow, and to my mind that does seem to have been quite soundly considered. There are a number, I'm not going to try and pronounce the names of a lot of them, but there are up to, I think it's 66 herbaceous plants and 574 shrubs. So it's quite considerable, and I think that we can deduce from that that there has been quite a lot of consideration gone into the hedgerow on this. So unless anyone else has got anything they'd like to contribute? No? Okay. So the recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions set out on pages 6.3 to 6.10 of the report, and subject to the amended conditions and informative set out on pages 1 to 5 of the addendum. Okay, so members, those in favour, would you please? Oh, sorry, I need to have a seconder. Do I have a seconder? I'll propose from the chair. Thank you. So all those in favour, can I have an indication, please? I believe that's unanimous. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. Agenda item 7. Land opposite Searles Yard, Trenders Avenue, Rayleigh. Members, there is additional information relating to this application set out in the addendum. Katie Fowler will present the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The application site is located on Trenders Avenue. The site is formed of a parcel of land edged in red on the plan here, so if I just follow that, the laser. And it measures a parcel of area of 0.29 hectares. Trenders Avenue is a private single-track road, and the site is located partway up the road and is opposite to the properties known as Pine Cottage, which is here, Mill Cottage here, the South Barn, which is here, and then the properties of Heron Stream Place here. The properties of Heron Stream Place form the land that was once Searles Yard, so that's where the application site has had its historic name from. The site is also nearby to the listed building of Trenders Hall, which is just located northwest of the application site. To the south of the site is a public right-of-way footpath, which runs along here. And the site is currently occupied by a stable block and is enclosed along part of the eastern and southern boundaries by a closed board fence. I'll just take you through some site photos. I'm conscious that some members did visit the site, but just to help those who did not. So this gate demarcates the entrance into the site, and then you have along the eastern boundary here, that closed board fence, and then along the southern boundary here. This photo just shows the public right-of-way that runs to the south, and you can see that boundary also. I'll just skip through some photos which are a little bit repetitive, but here you can see northwards up Trenders Avenue, and you also have the properties of Pine Cottage and Mill Cottage here, and you also have the kind of substantial hedgerow demarcating this boundary, and you can see the softness of other boundary treatments up Trenders Avenue. This photo shows the entrance to Heron Stream Place, which was once Sells Yard. So this photo is just looking to the north of the application site. Here we have the boundary of South Barn, and then this road where it forks in Trenders Avenue leads up to Trenders Hall, the listed building. This part of the vegetation is actually outside of the red line boundary, and so the application site sits behind that. This photo just shows a little bit better the context of this fork in the road where the application site is. So you can see the closed board fence just in the background of that photo. And then this photo is just looking into the application site, so we can see the stable block which exists at present, and then the bund and hedgerow that runs along the western boundary as well. Members may recall that the stable block which exists on the site was tied to a Section 106 agreement. This Section 106 agreement stated that the stable block was to be removed at such a time as the land edged in blue, so that's this parcel here, was no longer available for use of grazing of horses, and therefore the building at present is unlawful. The blue becomes unavailable for the use of grazing of horses. It's the council's understanding that the land edged in blue is no longer available for the use of grazing of horses, and so the building at present is unlawful. Discussions have taken place with the planning agent for the scheme, who considers the building to be lawful. The planning agent is of the view that the building is lawful as the Section 106 attempted to govern or restrict the use of the stable building in connection with the grazing land as opposed to the building itself. Therefore, the assessment set out within the officer report has considered the building as being retained if it were unlawful, and as a change of use if it were lawful. Planning permission is sought for the change of use of land for the stationing of 2 pitches for a Romany gypsy family. So the site plan here depicts the proposed site. We've got the red line here demarcating that site, and we can see where the vegetation falls outside of that red line. So we have the darker blue rectangles here and here, which show the mobile homes, and then the lighter blue here as the touring caravans. So the site would be made up of 2 mobile homes and 2 touring caravans. The existing stable block is proposed to be retained as a day room. The application site is located within the Greenbelt, where restrictive policies apply. The National Planning Policy for Traveller Sites sets out that traveller sites in the Greenbelt are inappropriate development which is harmful by definition. In addition, the proposal would have an impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. In terms of the proposal's contribution towards the purpose of Greenbelt land, the development would constitute urban sprawl and encroachment. The proposal would therefore be considered to have a greater impact on openness and would fail to meet the aims and purposes of allocating land within the Greenbelt. Any harm to the Greenbelt is attributed substantial weight, which must be clearly outweighed by very special circumstances. The very special circumstances of the application have been set out within the officer report. These include the existing lack of local provision, the lack of alternative accommodation, and the personal circumstances of the applicant. In particular, the best interests of the child are a primary consideration in this application, as the site would accommodate children under 16, and were permission refused, the family would be forced to live on the side of the road. Although not necessarily a determinative issue, no other consideration must be considered to be more important or given more weight. The best interests of the child must be at the forefront of decision makers' minds when they are exercising all planning judgment involved in this case. It is considered that there are a number of matters which are considered to weigh significantly in favour of the application, and this conclusion would be consistent with the outcome of recent appeal decisions. In respect of the day room, the officer report has set out whether the building is considered to be lawful or unlawful, whether the day room would be acceptable in connection with the proposed use. If unlawful, there are very special circumstances which exist to outweigh the harm to the greenbelt, and if lawful, the change of use would be considered as appropriate development within the greenbelt. The cumulative weight of the other considerations are considered to clearly outweigh the substantial harm in the greenbelt. Whilst the development would not be typical for the character of Trenders Avenue, the proposal must not be discriminated against because the homes of this ethnic group do not look like those of the settled communities. Conditions have been imposed regarding the landscaping on site with the intention of better integrating the development within the street scene. Further, the proposed development would not be considered to impact upon the setting of the nearby listed building. A number of comments have been received regarding the impact on nearby residential properties. It's considered that there would be sufficient separation with these properties so that the proposed development would not have an overbearing, overshadowing, or overlooking impact that would be unreasonable. The material considerations pertaining to the impact on residential amenity have been laid out within the officer report and found to be acceptable. The proposed development is considered to provide sufficient access and parking. The number of vehicles associated with the proposed use would be limited and therefore would not be considered to cause demonstrable harm upon Trenders Avenue. Although no specific details of the foul drainage have been submitted, a condition has been recommended requiring these details. There are a number of trees around the perimeter of the application site. However, the proposed development would not be within the root protection area of any of these. Finally, the application site would not be considered to exhibit any habitats of protected species, and therefore the proposal would not have an impact upon ecology. The application is recommended for approval, Chairman, subject to the conditions set out within the officer report and those on the addendum.
Thank you, Katie. We have 3 public speakers on this item. The first I'd like to call to the microphone is Councillor Alistair Matthews. He's speaking on behalf of Rawroth Parish Council. Councillor Matthews, you have 5 minutes to speak. I'll give you a 1-minute warning when you come to the end. Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Rawroth Parish Council and residents and oppose this application. The amount of travellers' sites, official and unofficial, in and around Rawroth and Rayleigh is disproportionate to the rest of the district. This can be clearly evidenced. This should not be a reason to approve further development, but a reason to decline to ensure that, in line with planning policy for travellers' sites, that these sites do not dominate the settled community. If the council were to make the site on Chelmsford Road on the A1245 an official site, although contrary to the parish council's objections in previous occasions, this would meet the council's target. This site has been there for over 10 years, although there are issues with the site. It has special permission to remain until an official site is established. Government planning policy for travellers states that unmet need is unlikely to clearly outweigh harm to the green belt and any other harm so as to establish very special circumstances. Therefore, the fact that there is currently an unmet need for travellers' sites should not be given the weight it has been given in the officer's report. There is also a duty to cooperate with other districts. It has been highlighted that there are pitches available in Wickford. In addition, Essex County Council run 12 sites and the applicant could equally apply for a pitch on one of these, rather than allow more harm to the green belt. It should also be noted that the applicant does currently have a place to live and therefore there is no immediate need to conform, as confirmed in Addendum 2 from the officer. Policy also states that planning should not put undue pressure on local infrastructure. There is already pressure with the new housing development in Rawroth Lane, which means that local doctors have no space for new patients and there are no school vacancies in local schools. In contrast, there are school places at Crays Hill School, which has recently had a very positive Ofsted report that I understand is a school that caters very well for travellers, and it is closer to the applicant's current address than Trenders Avenue. Policy DM1 planning must ensure that safe and suitable access to the site can be achieved for all users. This is still the case where it is a private road. The committee members who visited will have seen how narrow the road is. It is clearly inappropriate for touring caravans and larger vehicles, Additional traffic will increase risk. There are many children and visiting children, plus dog walkers and visitors to stables who walk and cycle along Trenders Avenue. Residents have asked for a risk assessment. This has not been responded to. Additional traffic and the movement of caravans will impact on amenity for those residents whose properties front onto Trenders Avenue. Due to the addendum today from the officer, there's a couple of points there from addendum at point 7. There are not a number of sites on Trenders Avenue with mobile homes other than unlawful ones. Knowing the address provided on land registry is not evidence of gypsy status. I agree with the additional conditions proposed if planning is approved and would recommend further conditions. I agree with the additional conditions requested by residents restricting commercial activity in the absence of any information by the applicant. It is essential and fundamental that the foul drainage system be installed and working before occupancy is otherwise. There will be a risk of foul drainage will contaminate the nearby watercourse and be an environmental risk. This is particularly important as the drawing still fails to show that the proposed day room with showers, toilets and kitchens is connected to the water treatment system. The day room should conform to the government guidelines under section 7, paras 17 to 26, which sets out the standard by which the building should conform, particularly with energy efficiency, the internal layout and facilities. The planning application process relies on people acting in good faith. A potential offence has been committed by the applicant under section 65(6) of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, as the applicant knowingly provided incorrect information about the ownership of the land in the original planning application. The applicant had owned the site for 2 years. It's not a slight error. Even if the committee do not consider this material to planning, it is misleading and goes to integrity and is a reason residents have asked for sufficient evidence
Can you be
about
drawing to a close now, please?
key areas that are material to this applicant. Residents have expressed to me how concerned they are that they are asked to accept what is presented on face value without verification, and I would ask committee members to ensure that they are satisfied with the evidence in this case. For example, personal circumstances, why the applicant must reside on Trenders Avenue, gypsy status, occupation. Lack of evidence can be a reason to refuse. Thank you for your diligence.
Thank you. Sorry, we have the second speaker, who is Mr. Green, who's speaking on behalf of the applicants. Mr. Green, please take your place at the microphone. You have 5 minutes to speak. I'll give you 1 minute notice when we come towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. Good evening. I am Nathaniel Green from Green Planning Studio, and I'm speaking on behalf of our client, Thomas Scott, in support of this application. This committee is here to decide the matter on planning issues only, and this application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. The application for a change of use of land and building for the stationing of caravans for residential purposes. And first, can I thank the officer for a very comprehensive addendum, which has been very, very useful. It is accepted that the development in the Metropolitan Greenbelt is inappropriate, but the fact that the Council's officers have recommended approval shows that officers have accepted that there are very special circumstances to overcome this. Due to the Greenbelt boundary being tightly drawn around existing settlements, it is unlikely that such development would be able to be put upon anything other than Greenbelt land. As your officer's report explains in great detail from paragraph 2.24 to 2.35, there is a fundamental need in the district that, other than windfall sites such as these, will not be met in the foreseeable future. Rochford District Council accepts that there is a requirement for at least 10 pitches, and this is likely to be an underestimate. Our client and his family are accepted as having gypsy status by the council. It is also accepted by the council that their present living arrangements involve doubling up with other members of the extended family due to the site that they are on being closed down by the owner. As a result, the sites they are forced to live on are in breach of their own planning conditions. Also noted in your report at 2.34, it is not for the applicant to establish whether there are available sites, but for the council. The council cannot demonstrate a 5-year land supply of deliverable gypsy sites, and this, coupled with the lack of formal policy regarding windfall sites, such as this one, constitutes a failure of policy that also counts heavily in favour of the application. This application therefore demonstrates more than one very special circumstance that is required to outweigh the harm to the greenbelt. Allowing this application will allow the family to have a stable base for their 4 children that will allow them to have an education. It will also allow the applicant's mother, who has health issues, to have access to local health facilities, whereas at present she has to travel 2 hours for medical care. And can I just reiterate that the rights of the child in that regard are paramount. The site lies in countryside that is well screened on 3 sides by existing vegetation. The proposed plan shows that further planting of trees and hedges will be implemented primarily to the north and west. The nearest occupied dwelling is 38 metres away to the east across Trenders Avenue, and as all structures will be single storey, there will be no overlooking. There is considered to be no impact upon highways, and it will also have little ecological impact upon the immediate area. However, an ecological enhancement condition will be accepted. Further to paragraph 2.57, I can confirm that the indicative floor plans have been supplied to show the conversion of the stable block into a day room of a suitable size for 2 pitches. And I can also confirm that our client is happy with the revised plan as recently submitted and as requested by the council. There have been discussions as to whether the stable block is lawful or not, and whether it constitutes a new building or change of use. It has also been suggested that a description of the development be amended to refer to the retention of the building. This suggested change to the description of the development was not agreed on the basis that the building has planning permission. The retention of something is not an act of development, but with only the other option of being the material change of use in the building. The building exists and was erected with the benefit of planning permission 02000235. The 2002 planning permission did not impose any conditions.
Minute left.
Sorry? 1
Left.
minute, thank you. Anyway, the Section 106 agreement sits alongside the planning permission for the building, and it attempts to govern or restrict the use of the stable building in connection with the use of an area of land for the grazing of horses. Should the council grant planning permission for the change of use of the building, which would be used ancillary to the use of the land for the stationing of caravans, then the Section 106 agreement was ceased to have any practical or meaningful effect. The recommendation now comes with 12 conditions, and our client is happy to comply with them, including the revisions in the addendum. And on that basis, I urge you to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. The third speaker is Ms. Costin, who is speaking on behalf of residents objecting to the application. Ms. Costin, please take your place at the microphone. You have 5 minutes, and with everyone else, I will let you know when we come to 1 minute towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Terry Costin. I'm a resident of Trenders Avenue, and I'm the 4th generation of my family to live there. I'm speaking on behalf of the 25 residents who oppose this application. Planning Policy for Traveller Sites 2015 makes clear that planning in the Greenbelt is inappropriate and harmful. It is only if very special circumstances clearly outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt and any other harm that permission should be granted. It further states that subject to the best interests of the child, personal circumstances and unmet need are unlikely to clearly outweigh harm to the Greenbelt and any other harm so as to establish very special circumstances. This sentence is repeated twice in the guidance at 16 and under H decision making, therefore setting a very high bar. We do not believe the applicant has demonstrated or evidenced to the council very special circumstances to a degree that would clearly outweigh harm to the Greenbelt and other harm. The site visit would have demonstrated both the close proximity to the settled community and the prominent position on Trenders Avenue. This is in stark contrast to other similar planning applications in the area where sites are set back from the road or on side roads. There are a cluster of 13 houses around the proposed site, some as close as 6 metres. Some directly face the site, and the proposed development would therefore significantly impact amenity and the overall character and cause harm to the area. The planning officer already acknowledges that caravans are not in keeping with the houses on Trenders Avenue, and noise impact will be significant. Paragraph 13 of the NPPTS states that planning authorities should promote peaceful and integrated coexistence between the site and local community. The developments of both Trenders Mews and Heron Stream Place were passed specifically to improve the character and amenity of the area. This was determined to be the very special circumstance in that case. Passing planning in this case would therefore completely undermine these previous decisions. The planning policy for travellers says that any planning should respect the settled community and for local planning authorities to have due regard to the protection of local amenity and local environment. The DM1 policy carries significant weight. The objectives include to ensure that new developments respect and make a positive contribution towards the built environment and should promote visual amenity. The fence that was erected by the applicant in 2021 already shows disregard for visual amenity in the area. We believe that personal circumstances have been given too great a weight in this case. Policy states that personal circumstances are unlikely to clearly outweigh harm to the Greenbelt. We've been told of no specific reasons why personal circumstances mean the applicant needs to live on this site with its identified harm to the Greenbelt. With regard to schools, there is no requirement to have a permanent residence to access education. Indeed, the education system makes special statutory provision for travellers and even allows registration at more than one school. With regard to healthcare, a permanent resident is not required to access healthcare, and this is a matter for Health Service Administration, not special circumstances under the planning law. We've asked for guidance for evidence on the gypsy status. If the applicant is depending on this as a material consideration to gain planning in Greenbelt, then surely it is for them to provide this evidence and for the officer to be satisfied with the evidence. In the legal commentary we've provided, it states that it is not sufficient for a planning officer to write subject to the lack of evidence to the contrary. But this is exactly what has happened in this case, and no evidence of status has been provided. In the absence of gypsy status, permission should be refused. We understand that it is not possible to insist that the applicant provide details of occupation, even though this could have a further detrimental impact on amenity. We therefore support the request for further conditions, especially no commercial activity or storage of plant and machinery on the site. However, we would like to make clear that we oppose this development and do not believe the special circumstances outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt and other harm relating to proximity, prominence and access. Thank you for taking the time to consider our arguments.
Thank you. Before we go to members on this, there are a couple of things that I want to say on this. First of all, I want to make it clear that in our adjudication of this application, we can only refer to planning law and planning policy. This committee is restricted to that. So with that being clear, the second thing is that I had a number of communications from councillors today asking about the particular situation that we have, which has been mentioned with regards to the private and confidential information that was judged by the officers, and members were concerned that we as a committee did not have access to that. I had a meeting with our legal representative before the meeting and a conversation with officer and a legal representation. And to that end, I'd like to actually pass the microphone over to Giles to explain the situation on that so we can be clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You all know, you're very familiar with the PPTS, that personal circumstances of the applicant are something which you are required to take into account when making a decision of this sort. Now, the reason in this case that the personal circumstances haven't been disclosed to you is because the applicant asked that they weren't. Now, I understand, and perhaps the officer could confirm this is right, I understand that the officer has since given your concerns about not having seen this information, the applicant, or certainly the applicant's agent, has agreed that some of that information may be made available. Is that correct, Katie?
Yes.
Okay. Now, it seems to me that either you as a committee could just accept the word of your officer. I'm sure you don't doubt what she says when she summarises the information. But I can also see that as you, the members, are actually making the decision, you ought to be told about the relevant personal circumstances in this case. And given that the agent has agreed that that should be allowed, I suggest that there is a distinction in the information. Some of the personal circumstances are clearly relevant to the decision which you have to make. And it seems to me that that ought to be disclosed to the committee, and I could do that in a minute if people are happy with that. There is some other information in there which is more, if you like, more personal. It's essentially detailed healthcare information, which it seems to me isn't relevant necessarily to your decision. And respecting the wishes of the applicants, I don't propose to say anything about that. So, Chair, if you're happy with that course of action.
Yeah, I would suggest then that maybe we adjourn for 5 minutes for you to address the committee, or are you happy to do it in open session?
Well,
Can I just ask for legal point of view on this first, please? I will come back to members.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point I'm making is that I think it's right that the committee themselves obviously know this information. Now, whether the applicant would wish for members of the public not to be made aware of that information is another matter, and it may be that that was something we could discuss if we do have a short adjournment.
Okay, thank you for the advice. Members, on that particular aspect, nothing else, just on that aspect, can I have any comments? I believe Councillor Lawson, you were first.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't see why we can't deal with this in exactly the same way we do with full council and have a private recess while we discuss this freely with legal, and then we can come back and discuss the case. That's my opinion.
Okay, Councillor Efty.
I agree with that, Chairman. And may I suggest that the committee leave and go to the room as you enter the building on the left, instead of trying to get everybody out this room.
Yep, I think that's a useful recommendation. Thank you. So in that case, I will adjourn the meeting.
Sorry, Chair, before we do that, I will need to speak to the agent. So if people see me talking to him, just to make sure, just to be clear about what it is that he's anxious isn't, if anything, disclosed to the members of the committee.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Councillor Stanley?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why the legal can't go into the room and discuss that with them and then come back and let us know. Then we can do exactly what we need to do.
Sounds reasonable. Is the applicant happy with that? Yep, okay. I'll adjourn the meeting then for...
Chairman, I thought
sorry,
proposal was that we
Councillor
went
Foster.
to the room.
I think the
Councillor
proposal
Stanley.
is that the applicant and our legal representative go there first. Okay, let's do it this way. The legal representative and the applicant will go to the coffee area behind the screens to my right and have a conversation. Members, we will adjourn to the room in the front of the building, and we will come back as soon as we have that information. Thank you.